Pullman today for a planning meeting for this weekend's football game. So this is kind of what we are embedding with our partners. We want to exercise with you. We want you to understand how to make the most of the information that we have. And so it's a very busy video that I'm going to work out. Hopefully by now you've heard about Slack, or NWS Chat 2.0, operated and powered by Slack. It is a huge upgrade from our previous NWS Chat platform. So I wanted to share this video real fast to just kind of see, so you can get an introduction if you have not heard that yet. So let's do that real fast.
The National Weather Service has officially moved to NWS Chat 2.0 powered by Slack. This initiative provides a modern and reliable tool for you to communicate with Weather Service offices during weather, water, and climate events. So what's in it for you? NWS Chat 2.0 connects you directly to Weather Service forecasters in real time. You'll also have access to new features, including the ability to share photos, videos, and log in on mobile devices. That's right. You can now access NWS Chat 2.0 via mobile app. And the Slack platform is secure and reliable, supporting communication and collaboration around the clock. Bonus, you won't have to change your passwords as much. If you haven't logged into NWS Chat 2.0 yet, here are 3 tips to get started. First, check out your local NWS office's channels. This is where you'll collaborate with other partners and Weather Service forecasters. Next, try sending a message in channel or uploading a photo. Lastly, search for other offices to keep an eye on weather activity in your area. After joining new channels, you can even configure channel notifications to ensure you never miss a message. I'll see you on NWS Chat 2.0.
Oh gosh.
The National Weathers.
Don't want to do that again. So I understand that we might be having some audio issues. I don't see people dropping off yet. So hopefully that's resolved by us turning off our cameras. So a reminder that we are recording this. Thank you, Charlotte. And we will share everything afterwards. So if there are, the audio issues are too bad and you have to drop off, totally understand, and our apologies for that, but we will share everything afterwards. So to wrap up the NWS chat portion, this is such a powerful tool. It is a great way to communicate lots of improvements in our capabilities, especially when it comes to sharing information, graphics, videos. There's different channels that you can subscribe to and get notifications when there's new communication. And at the bottom there, our point of contact has been Valerie. She has done a phenomenal job getting everybody signed up and answering questions and even walking people through how to establish their accounts. So Valerie is an excellent resource for you if you are interested. Cannot say this enough as we get into this winter season. Strongly encourage you to sign up for Slack and reach out to valerie.thaler@noaa.gov for more information about that. Okay. Next, before we hand it over to Robin so she can get on the road, we'll talk about this kind of introduction to our winter hazards. Everything that we do when it comes to messaging is going to be based on this matrix here. We adopted this several years ago, going from the no risk kind of green level up to the extreme, the magenta. And it's not just this linear uptick in impacts. It's actually a matrix. So we're combining both the likelihood or the probability of something happening along with those impacts. So as you increase both the likelihood and the impact level, we'll go up that matrix and increase those warning colors. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through this presentation today. But first, we're going to start with Robin, who is going to review our hydrology program and what to look forward to this season. Take it away, Robin.
All right, good morning, everyone. Robin Fox, the surface hydrologist here at the office. We're going to cover a few new things in the hydro world, review what we know, and I'm going to share some past flood events for you. So next slide. All right, what is new is the National Water Prediction Service, otherwise known as NWIPS. This is going to replace our current page, which is the Advanced Hydro Prediction Service, otherwise known as AHAPS. This switch is going to be coming in the spring of 24. Now, this new service is going to have all the same services that we have now, except more improvements with a GIS-based platform and easily turn on and off different elements. It's going to have a hazard viewer on it, precipitation estimates and snow, and also the RFC river forecasts on there. In addition, we're going to introduce the National Water Model forecast as well. So there's going to be a lot more information available. What's really exciting is it's been going through testing, and starting later this week, it's going to switch over to public testing. So I'm going to get that information available in the next couple days and share it with you as soon as I can. So every one of our partners will be able to look at this page and compare it and provide feedback on this new page. Okay, next slide, please. All right, other new thing is our drought information statements, otherwise known as the DGTs. In the past, they were all written out in long paragraphs. Well, starting this fall, we introduced a new experimental modernized view with more graphics and charts in a PDF format. And we just issued a new one yesterday for the region, and I encourage you to take a look at it. It's linked to the front of our page, and we're looking for comments and feedback. And we're still collecting through the end of the month. So feel free to check it out, provide the feedback. I have a little QR code that you can review and provide your feedback on this, because I think this is a great way of sharing information, especially when we're talking about drought impacts. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now we're just going to review types of flooding that we see in our region. The first one is river flooding, and this is the flooding that we see in our main stem rivers, and it is taken place at river forecast points where flood stages and impacts have been identified. We have 25 of these river forecast points in our region. And in fact, the picture to the right in Moscow, Idaho, shows the flooding that took place last December on Paradise Creek, which is one of our forecast points. These points are calibrated with river forecasts from the Northwest River Forecast Center in Portland. And these forecasts are issued twice a day, or more so when the flows are high. And the flooding at these points are driven mostly by snowmelt and to some extent rain. And these are the forecasts that we see on our AHAPS page and soon to come the NWIPS page. So when we see the risk of flooding at these forecast points, that's when we issue river flood watches and warnings that provide details on forecasts and impacts at those points. Okay, the next type of flooding is called small stream and aerial flooding. And as the name describes, it's at the small rivers and streams, low-lying areas, and anything that does not have a river forecast point. It could be field flooding as well. And the big drivers for this is rain and snowmelt. As for tools for looking at the threat of flooding in these areas, because it's driven by precipitation, that is our main tool with that. And we do issue aerial flood watches and warnings that will provide general impacts for the affected areas. So this is where we're looking for our partners for more details. So for example, last April, we had a lot of aerial flooding across Ferry, Stevens County, and the Colville Reservation. And because of the rain and the snowmelt in that area. So many of the small rivers and drainages were experiencing flooding, and we were really thankful to get all of the reports from the emergency managers in those areas to help provide more messaging for us to get the word out. Another type of flooding is flash flooding, and this is driven by intense precipitation, such as thunderstorms, that can lead to rapid flooding in less than 6 hours. And this is an elevated concern, especially in urban areas, in steep terrain, and near and below burn scars, where the runoff will increase the flash flood risks. And we've had a few experiences of flash flooding over the last year, one of which happened in the city of Lewiston, where we had over an inch of rain that fell in under an hour from a thunderstorm. That caused some flooding and standing water in the city. We also had another one that took place in Conconelli over the 4th of July holiday back in 2022. And that caused a flash flood and a debris flow from a burn scar further up the hill. So this is a main concern that we see in our areas. And I want to point out that we do issue flash flood watches that cover a large portion of a geographical area for the potential of this type of flooding, hours in advance. But the flash flood warnings are more concise to a location where that threat is. So overall, I just want to share the importance of good communication and sharing reports, not only of water and flooding, but any types of weather hazard. So next slide, please. Okay, last topic I want to cover has to do with El Nino and flood stats. So no spoiler alert, yes, we have an El Nino going on, and you'll hear more about this in our presentation. El Nino events typically bring less snow to our region. And with our river flooding attributed heavily towards snowmelt, the chances of river flooding actually decrease during El Nino events. We have a study of El Nino flood events that has been expanded to include the last 70 years since 1950. And it's surprising to see that on average, the chance of flooding is about 25% or less. There are still a few standouts like Stehekin that sees a lot of flooding depending on all throughout the year, and Coeur d'Alene and Cataldo. But of the 25 forecast points, only 17 of them have not experienced flooding during El Nino events. There were some big flood events during El Nino years back in the 1950s and 60s, but what about recently? So in this chart, what's highlighted in blue is flood events that have happened during El Nino years between 1950 and 2000. What's highlighted in red are the more recent ones since 2000. So any floods that have occurred during El Nino events since 2000 have occurred during weak to moderate El Ninos. And no river forecast point has seen more than 2 floods during El Nino events. So you're probably wondering, what is the outlook for this coming season? Well, chances look a lot less than we've seen in the last 3 years, which were La Nina years. And basically it depends on our precipitation and our snowpack for the upcoming winter and how fast that snow comes off. All right, next slide, please. One last thing I wanted to share with you is our weather spotter and observer training. We just finished the last fall series of live virtual training. We had 47 that participated with the training, which is right around average. And they came from all corners of the inland Northwest, from Okanagan County down to Lewis County, Kootenai County, and Grant County. I wanted to let you know that the recordings and notes from this training will be available on our webpage under the Spotter Resources section. Our next round of training is going to be in the spring, and you can see what our current counts for the inland Northwest are, with over 1,400 weather spotters that are registered and just under 200 CoCo-ROS observers. So we'll pass the presentation on to the next section. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. Great job, and please drive safe today. The reason we wanted to get her in here early is so that she can get on the road and go out to Chelan County today. So thank you so much, Robin, for doing that, and safe travels today. All right, next section. Robin kind of hinted at those watches, warnings, advisories, and what that means. Shar is going to take this next section and dive more deeply. It's going to dive a little deeper into those watches, warnings, advisories, and what that means. So take it away, Shar.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'll focus my presentation more on the winter, the snow. But as Robin had mentioned, we have this tiered approach to issuing products when we see that a hazard is coming. And so maybe you've heard about it, maybe you're not too sure about it. We have a watch, a warning, and advisory. Those are our 3 levels of products. And it really depends based on the expected impact that we're looking at, the certainty and confidence level. We also take into consideration if this is an early season event versus a late season event, if there's a holiday weekend, if there's travel, all these things come into play when we begin down this road of issuing a watch, warning, or advisory. And the order of operations that we issue these in, it starts with a watch. And that's when we begin to have increasing confidence, at least 50% confidence in what event is about to unfold. And then as we get closer to the event, then we move into what is it going to be a warning or an advisory. And that's where we take into account if it's going to be a really strong threat to life and property, really high impact, or maybe it's a lower impact and a lower significance. And that's where we would go to a warning versus an advisory. And we encourage people to take action, have a plan, be prepared, because things can change and as we get closer to that event. So we do have a place on our webpage where we highlight all of the criteria that we lay out for our winter products, our watch, warning, advisory. So if you go to our main webpage, the link is here, but you can also find it on our main webpage under the watch, warning, advisory definitions, and it'll pop up this image for you. And so you can look based on where you're at and what area you are concerned with, what the criteria is for a winter storm watch warning, a blizzard warning, a frost freeze, and also you can go to the summertime products there as well, but it'll give you the criteria and it's color coded to show how many inches of snowfall for an event that we're looking for that winter storm warning and criteria. So on the next slide, we'll go into showing our winter storm warning criteria. That's changed a little bit for this season, and we were experimenting with it last season. But you can see it's color-coded for the inland Northwest. We have a baseline of 6 inches for our warning criterias, with the mountain elevations above 3,000 feet having to have 8 inches of snow. And so you can see most of Northeast Washington, all of the Idaho Panhandle, those mountain criterias are going to be above 8 inches. For our Columbia Basin, the lowest elevation down there in southern Grant County, that's going to be down at the 5-inch level. Our Cascade Mountains, the eastern slopes, that's going to have that 8-inch criteria. And then the Cascade Crest, along with the entire rest of the Cascade Mountains, that's going to have the 12-inch criteria for a winter storm warning. And that's what we take into account when we're looking at the expected impacts for the storm duration. Also, Southeast Washington and the Palouse, the Lewis and Clarkston area, that's also in the 5-inch criteria range. And you can see Pendleton's area down in southern Washington, along the Oregon border, they have the same criteria laid out there as well. So another tool in our toolbox that we use for messaging and relaying the message to help you decision makers understand what we're conveying is probabilistic snow forecast. And on our winter page, the link is right there for you, we highlight our current snowfall forecast, and we also show our high-end snowfall, when you could have as much as this amount, and the low-end snowfall. You will have at least this amount. And so depending on the snow event that we're looking at in the current term, you'll have all of these different graphics to see probabilistic snowfall information. There'll be percent chances of seeing specific amounts, so greater than 1 inch, 2 inch, 4 inches. And you'll also be able to see for specific point locations. Now, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, there is a snowfall total by location chart. And you can change the county with the drop-down menu, or you can just view the entire list of cities in that chart. And you scroll down and there's a ton of different locations in there. And we're working to get more locations in there. But it will read out, so if you can't see on the map, it will read out the expected snowfall along with the low end and high end and the chance of seeing specific thresholds of snow. So it's pretty handy if you're looking for just one specific area. And so also on that page, you can see these pop-up graphics. If you hover over them, you can get a bigger view and it'll give you that percentage chance. So on the left here, this is an example from last year. You can see the probability of at least 2 inches of snow in Omak at that date was 9% chance. So that snowfall total by location chart at the very bottom is really handy if you're looking for specific locations. And if there's a location that you'd like to see us add to that map, just send us an email and we'll work to get that location on there, because we know there's a lot of locations that would benefit from having their location on that chart. And so that winter page, if you bookmark it, it'll refresh with every winter storm that we're going through and every the duration of that specific storm, and it'll update with those snowfall totals. And I think that's all I have, so I'll pass it back to Andy.
Great. I think I see a question on the dashboard, so take a look at that, Shar, see if you can't answer that.
Oh yeah.
We're going to keep on moving.
Sorry.
We're going to keep on moving on for now. And, sorry, just looking. Doing too many things at once. Okay, we're going to move on and talk about snow squalls real fast. The next two, I have snow squalls and then windstorms, and then we're going to pass it over to Stephen to talk about extreme cold. So snow squalls are not new, but the Weather Service capability to warn about snow squalls has evolved over the last couple of years. We now have snow squall warnings available to us. And so we are doing, actually this week, if you haven't seen, a snow squall awareness week. We started Monday and we're going to go through the end of the week and talk about the science behind snow squalls, what that means, how we issue warnings and what that means, and then also snow squall safety. And this picture you see on the right is a snow squall that actually impacted Sandpoint area this past spring in March. It was an incredible event. It was a very short duration event, but from what I heard from the folks that lived there, it was like blizzard conditions. It went from a beautiful afternoon to zero visibility almost instantly. And so this video that I have right here kind of illustrates that, and these are some of the messaging that we're sharing. This is only about a 30-second video here, so hold on. No, there we go. And it's such a powerful video just to illustrate how fast it can go from beautiful weather and nice driving conditions to fatal conditions. It's really scary how fast that can happen. So yeah, just a little bit more about the snow squall warnings. These are brief events, 30 to 60 minutes typically. Short duration, intense burst of snow and wind leading to whiteout visibility and the possibility of flash freeze on roads. And the combination of those, both whiteout visibility and the flash freeze, is what results in those treacherous conditions. On the right, there's a tweet from also activate wireless emergency alert, WEA, for those types of events, so that if you are driving into an area where there is the possibility of a snow squall, you will actually get that notification and can get off the road before you encounter those dangerous conditions. And this next slide that's coming up, the offices, the National Weather Service office, especially in the Pennsylvania area, have had a lot of great work that they've done with snow squalls over the years. They're actually going to do a national webinar tomorrow to talk about snow squalls. So if this is something that you're interested in, or it's new to you and you want to learn more about the snow squall science and the messaging and all the things that we're doing, this is a great opportunity to find out more. This snow squall webinar is Thursday on this, November 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific. So you can register right there for that. And there's also a link there at the top that talks more about the snow squalls. All right. Checking on time, we're 10:30, halfway done. All right. The next hazard is windstorms. We are all too familiar with windstorms. So we've been talking about watches, warnings, advisories, and impacts, and how we're going to convey those messages. Windstorms, it just seems like at least a couple times a year, we are dealing with a significant windstorm. We've already had kind of the intro. Thankfully, nothing too bad this season, this November. But this chart that I'm showing right here, this is something that we have bounced off our emergency manager partners and our partners in utilities to get feedback about the wind speeds versus the impacts, and kind of help us understand at what wind speed will we start to see potential impacts, from scattered power outages to numerous to widespread, all those things. And so this is the graph that you've probably seen in previous years that we've helped kind of describe what the expected impacts are going to be from certain wind events. If we're forecasting wind speeds about 55 miles per hour, then it's going to fall in that range, and we're going to highlight that to all of our messaging. So going back to that legacy way of conveying confidence and spreading the word, the wind advisory will typically fall in this range, in that up to 60 miles per hour range. So if we're expecting wind gusts, then this is when you might see a wind advisory for your area. For those stronger events, that's when we'll go up to the high wind warning. And that's when we are expecting high impacts, major impacts, widespread power outages. So if we are advertising that possibility for a windstorm, it will depend on if it's an advisory or warning, and that will kind of relate to what type of impacts you can expect to see. And we'll really dial in on exactly what those wind speeds are going to be by location. So this next graph is a matrix that we came up with last year when we had a windstorm. And just like the snow probabilities, we can also do wind gust probabilities. So for this example, Spokane Airport, we were looking at 100% probability of at least 40 mile per hour gusts. And when you go up to 50 miles per hour, you can see that probability goes down to 55%. And then the probability of 60 miles per hour is non-zero. So there's at least a small chance that we could see some isolated gusts over 60 miles per hour. And so based on that, you can kind of understand what that potential impact is going to be by location. So this is another way that we're not just using the watches, warnings, advisories and painting a map and saying, hey, good luck, everybody. We want to convey this confidence. How bad is it going to be? And what's our confidence in the different thresholds for what those impacts are going to be? So we will continue to do that this upcoming winter season. And always, we are looking for feedback. If there's more locations that you want to see, or you don't understand what we're sharing, please let us know so we can improve our messaging. We're always looking for feedback. So this last slide that I have for wind events, this is how the messaging is going to go. Typically 1 to 3 days in advance, we'll put out that high wind watch when we see the potential for something happening. And then as we get closer, just like what Charlotte was talking about with the winter storm warning, we'll upgrade that to either a high wind warning or a wind advisory based on the impacts, expected impacts, and our confidence on that. So that typically happens in that last 48 hours or so before the onset of the winds. So in addition to that, as I've always said, the watches, warnings, advisories, that's our legacy products that we use as a baseline to convey threat. The extra mile that we're trying to go is to provide briefings to help you understand our confidence, the timing, and all of those other details that are going to come with these potential storms. So we will be providing email briefings, special weather briefings like this on GoToMeeting. And if it's an event that you want somebody there in your office relaying this to you or your partners, we can come out and do briefings in person or virtually for your partners as well. So let us know how we can help you. If you're looking for more information from us, we want to give that to you. So the last section on the winter weather hazards before we get into the seasonal outlook is extreme cold. So I'll pass it over to Stephen for the next couple minutes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yeah, my name is Stephen Van Horn. I'm a forecaster here, and good morning. So let's go ahead and jump into the extreme cold. And then also I have some slides talking about a hashtag program that we started up last year that I want to talk about too. So just wanted to define what we mean by extreme cold. So when we see some well below average temperatures during a winter season that could lead to hypothermia or frostbite and become life-threatening. So this is what we mean if we're messaging extreme cold. Typically, these will follow strong Arctic intrusions. And if you look there on the left, bottom left, it's just a Google Earth image of depicting cold air coming down out of Canada. And in strong Arctic intrusion events, we can get some really cold air that comes into eastern Washington and North Idaho. Also, this usually comes with some north winds. And so those winds on exposed skin can lead to or exacerbate these cold impacts, and that's what the wind chill is. And these can also be longer duration events as well. Next slide. Okay, so what do we mean by wind chill and why is this can be dangerous? When we get really cold temperatures, like what I was talking about with these Arctic intrusions, what that cold air does is you get a layer of warmer air just due to your body heat around your skin, and the wind will blow that insulating air away. That's just right above your skin there. And so the wind chill effect will blow that warm air away, and then you're more exposed to that cold air, and you're more likely to be under the impacts of hypothermia, and if you're out long enough, also could see dangers of frostbite too. Okay, next slide. Okay, I just wanted to briefly remind everybody what our criteria is if you see a wind chill watch warning or an advisory. So an advisory, if you see a wind chill advisory, that's where we have forecast or observed wind chills of -10 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind of at least 10 miles per hour or greater. A warning, the wind speeds are the same magnitude, but the wind chill magnitudes are down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And so a watch would be sort of letting you know that there's a possibility that we could see wind chills at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. So usually if we are seeing an event where we could see warning criteria, we would try to start with a watch, as we kind of mentioned with other parameters that we talked about so far. And if it does look like those situations are favorable as we get to within 2 days or so for a warning, then we would upgrade the watch to a warning. If it looks like we won't be sort of meeting that criteria, we go to an advisory. So these are the values that we are going off of if we issue a watch, warning, or an advisory. Okay, next slide. Okay. I just wanted to, the next handful of slides I have is talking about an event that we had last year. So we did have an extreme cold event. Just wanted to show that we can actually see these weeks out in advance. This is a product from the Climate Prediction Center that is showing the risk of some hazardous temperatures. So this was actually issued on December 8th for an event that actually occurred on December 20th through the 23rd. So this was just about 2 weeks out before we actually saw it. So it's not always the case that we can see it this far in advance, but sometimes we can. Sometimes we will start with a message like this. The Climate Prediction Center is showing the potential for extreme cold that could be coming in. Okay, next slide.
while that next slide is coming in, I wanted to share that it goes the same for extreme heat waves and cold Arctic intrusions. That is sometimes that's the easiest for us to see far in advance. So we might have a week or two in advance notice of when we might see those extreme temperatures. So we're going to try to convey that and relay that information as soon as we start to see that possibility. So the Climate Prediction Center does a great job of highlighting that. And even if you saw in that last one, it has the confidence of low, moderate, or high confidence. And for that event, it even circled the inland Northwest for high confidence. So just want to make that plug that Climate Prediction Center does a great job of highlighting those extreme events.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, your audio is kind of coming in and out me, Andy, so hopefully you're done there. But with this next slide, I just wanted to kind of show another example of what we might show for messaging as it gets a bit closer, an extreme cold or very cold wind chill event. So talking about covering exposed skin, also batteries in your cars, more likely to fail, faucets, and then also livestock and pets. We can't forget about them. They are also impacted by extreme cold. So this particular event last year, this is what we were looking at as far as the forecasts. And if we go to the next one, this is actually what was observed. I have a little animation. So I believe this was, this is Thursday. I think that was the 21st, but this was actually the wind chills that were observed. So you can see they were very cold down the Okanagan Valley. We had wind chills of below -20, even up to -30, even -38 there, which is extremely cold and dangerous. The North Idaho saw some very cold wind chills as well, below -20, and you could even see that across the Columbia Basin. So this was, a very sort of extreme event as far as cold and wind chills. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then the next few slides is I just wanted to do a plug for collaborative hashtags. This was a email briefing that we sent out leading up to this extreme cold event or wind chill event that we had. I believe we sent this out on the Monday, so Tuesday, December 20th, until the 21st, 22nd, it was getting increasingly cold with those winds. And you can see in there we highlighted that the National Weather Service was going to be using a hashtag INW, which stands for Inland Northwest Extreme Cold. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about that over the next few slides. And go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we are doing with this is when we see an event that we want to use a hashtag for, we'll use one of the two prefixes, either PNW for Pacific Northwest or INW for Inland Northwest. So the PNW is for events impacting much of the Northwest region, and the INW mostly for the Inland Northwest east of the Cascades. So we might use it for, this is just some examples for the suffixes, winter storm or ice storm, windstorm, flooding, and putting those together. An example there might be PNW winter storm, or hashtag PNW winter storm, or hashtag INW ice storm is a couple of examples. Okay, next slide. I just got a couple more here. So Andy talked about our risk matrix here. So for an events where we want to use the hashtag, focusing mostly on just those level 4 and level 5 impacts, and also having a fairly high probability that they're going to occur. So the idea is that we want to go ahead and hype up this weather event and looking for those high impacts, level 4 and 5, where life to life or risk to life and property is a higher potential. Okay, next slide. Try and wrap up here in the next couple minutes. So we want to bring further attention or hype up these high impact weather events that are a threat to life and property, so our major and extreme impact level events. We might do, if you get a partner email and it's a moderate impact, that's maybe a week out or so, we also want to sort of highlight those too, because there could be a potential for going to a major extreme event. So the extreme cold is a good example where we could see those weeks in advance, or even extreme heat, like Andy said as well. So usually we can see those weeks in advance too. So kind of get the hype train going early if we have a lot of signals showing that those kind of events could be coming. So we encourage you, our partners, to use a hashtag if we do it, just to spread the word as much as we can. And so this is just an example. This is a new thing that we're doing. We've only done it once, and this was last winter with that extreme cold event. But we're trying to kind of encourage this, the momentum to go if we want to do a hashtag with future weather events. So this is just a couple of posts: Spokane at the top, Pendleton on the bottom there. And then we did actually have a couple of our partners using the hashtag as well on the right. And this was a post showing snow blowing over the road, and that was with those winds. And we did get some snow there that was blowing. And so the idea is just to kind of spread the word when we have one of these higher impact level 4 and level 5 events, when we want to do a hashtag just to kind of hype up the event. So we encourage you to use those hashtags when we have it. It's not just for National Weather Service offices, but all of our partners to spread the word and have the information all in one hashtag when we look at our social media pages, Facebook and Twitter. And that concludes my slides. I'll pass it back over to Andy and Jeremy.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And my apologies. I did not realize I was having audio issues. That is horrible news. So hopefully you can hear me. I'll just quickly pass it over to Jeremy to take us home with the seasonal outlook, and then we'll wrap it up at the end. Go ahead, Jeremy.
All right. Thank you, Andy. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. So we're going to start, before we get into the prediction for this upcoming winter, let's just start with where we are at, beginning with precipitation and temperatures, both since January 1st, so for the current calendar year, as well as for our current water year, going back just to October 1st. And for temperatures there on the right, you can see for both the calendar year and water year, our temperatures have been a little bit warmer than normal. And on the left there is precipitation. And for this current water year, since October 1st, you can see precipitation there in central Washington and across southeast Washington and into the Lewiston area. It has been wetter than normal, with precipitation in some places as much as 150 to 200% of normal. But if we look at the calendar year since January 1st, that does paint a different picture. It has been a dry 2023 across much of eastern Washington and North Idaho, as well as the Cascades, where some areas have only had 50 to 70% of their normal precipitation. But if we look across portions of north central Washington, from Wenatchee up through Omak and Republic, it has been wetter than normal for the calendar year. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this is the current drought monitor, and you can see for those areas that have been wetter than normal, those areas are not depicted in any drought or even abnormally dry conditions. But for those areas for the calendar year that have been drier than normal across the Cascade Crest and into North Idaho and parts of eastern Washington, conditions range anywhere from abnormally dry to severe drought, given how dry it has been for 2023. All right, next slide. The next slide shows the drought forecast. So this goes out through January 31st of 2024. And drought is forecast to persist across eastern Washington and North Idaho, as well as the Cascades. Over central Washington, you can see there are some areas there that drought is forecast to develop. However, at this point, given how wet the water year has been since October 1st, there is low confidence in these areas for drought developing. So we'll have to wait and see if these projections change. This was released a couple weeks ago on October 31st, so there will be a new forecast coming out shortly for that area. All right, next slide. All right, as Robin mentioned earlier, we are looking at an El Nino for this upcoming winter, and it's already a done deal. A 100% chance for an El Nino this winter. You could see on this bottom left graph, this is the percent chance of El Nino conditions. And for this December, January, February, you can see the chance for El Nino there is 100%. And it remains pretty high going all the way into the spring. And then as we get into next summer, lower confidence. But we are looking at El Nino. And if we look at this top left, you can see a lot of these values in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific are already exceeding 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, which puts us into strong El Nino territory. And you can see the forecast here going into the winter is for it to potentially strengthen even a little bit more and peaking out over the winter. So what does that mean? The bottom right graphic here shows that typically with El Ninos, we tend to be warmer than normal. And we also tend to have a more active Pacific jet stream, but where that is aimed can vary from year to year. A lot of times Southern California is the area that gets wet, but that is not always the case, as we will show here in a little bit. All right, the next slide. And this is just showing El Nino is defined as 3-month averages. So the latest average that calculates the August, September, October average is already up to that 1.5 threshold for that 3-month average, meaning we have already hit strong El Nino conditions. All right, next slide. All right, so we went back and looked at previous strong El Nino cases for the winter months, so December, January, February. And the thing that sticks out to us on here is if we look at every event since 1980, it has been warmer than normal across the inland Northwest. So the previous 5 cases for strong El Ninos have all been warmer than normal. You can see 72, 73 was a bit of an outlier with colder than normal conditions across much of the Northwest. But again, that was quite a ways back, and with the impacts of climate change, we have less confidence that those earlier cases would pan out for this winter with more weight given in those warmer than normal cases. All right, next slide. And for precipitation, you can see there's a high amount of variability. As I mentioned, that Pacific jet stream does vary during El Nino winters, and this is looking at the previous strong El Nino cases. And in 2015-16, we had wetter than normal conditions across all of Washington and North Idaho. And in 2009 and 10, that tend to be a drier El Nino winter, as well as 91, 92 tend to be on the drier side. But the previous case before that, again, it was a wet case. So there tends to be a lot of variability with regards to the precipitation during strong El Nino cases. All right, next slide. All right, so what do the outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center say? Well, for the month of November, the odds are favoring warmer than normal temperatures and above normal precipitation. And a lot of this has to do with the very wet start to November. A lot of areas have already had 150 to 200% of normal precipitation for just the first 2 weeks of November. Lewiston has already achieved its normal November precipitation just in the first week of November. They had a very wet period. So next slide, we'll look at the winter outlook for December, January, February. And if we could go back one slide there, you can see that the outlook very closely mimics the previous strong El Nino events. There's much higher confidence that our El Nino will be at least near to above normal in temperatures, whereas for precipitation, you can see the odds are slightly weighted towards California being wetter than normal, but again, these odds are only slightly weighted this way, so there is generally lower confidence in the precipitation forecast. All right, next slide. And we'll wrap it up here in the next few slides, because I know we're getting close to the 11 o'clock hour. All right, so with the warmer than normal winter favored, that does decrease our potential for snowfall compared to what we normally see. And you can see that's especially true for the Spokane area and the Palouse, with historically, we only see about 65 to 75% chance of our normal snowfall. And our colder areas like Winthrop, Leavenworth, Chelan, and Republic, where it tends to be cold enough for snow, even if we warm it up, you can see that overall the El Nino signal for snowfall is not as pronounced. All right, next slide. And this next slide just summarizes that. So in central Washington, if we look at neutral El Nino and La Nina winters, there's not a lot of correlation in how the winter will pan out. Whereas across eastern Washington, looking at Spokane and Moscow, see there's a definite reduction in snowfall during El Nino years compared to La Nina, which we've had in the last 3 years, or for neutral years. All right, next slide. And this is just the bottom line. Warmer than normal winter is favored. Precipitation carries high uncertainty. Snow is likely to be below normal for most of the lowlands, except again, more uncertainty for those Cascade Valleys and Okanagan Highlands. But one of the main points is, El Nino is not the only player. Don't expect the typical El Nino pattern to last all winter. There are other factors that influence our winter weather, and some of these can last for 1 to 3 weeks and could bring sudden changes such as Arctic cold snaps, flooding, heavy snow, and strong winds. And the very last slide I have to show is looking at the outlook into next week. And you can see wow, this is quite a bit different than what El Nino typically brings. And there is potential for a pattern change with elevated chances for below normal temperatures with near normal precipitation. However, I must emphasize that 2 days ago, this looked much more likely to occur. In the last 2 days, the models have been backing off on this. So don't be surprised if these outlooks change. So stay tuned to latest forecasts as we go into next week. All right, that is all I have. I'll pass it back to Andy.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. And it is obvious to me that my computer is really choking, because I swear I've been advancing the slides even before you ask, and it still takes 5 seconds each time for it to advance. So my apologies if the audio is not great and it's been a little bit slow. But here is the contact information. Again, we did record this, and we are going to share this recording and all the slides that we have presented today. All the contact information from the folks that you've heard from today, myself, Jeremy, Charlotte, Robin, and Stephen, all of you, great job. So happy that you were able to contribute. On the left side there also is our 24/7 weather support. If you need anything from us 24 hours a day, that is our contact information, our phone line to the operations area, or you can send us emails. So I will wrap it up with that. I'm going to try and give you the capability of unmuting yourself. Charlotte, I might need your help for that. So if you want to raise your hand or ask any questions, we will stick around for several more minutes and answer those questions. So give me a second. Let me figure out how to do that.
Unmuted.
There's also the question box. You can type it in.
If anybody wants to test it out and unmute themselves and just say something, you can do that too.
Did we do it? I don't even know. Oh, see, somebody's unmuted. Great. Okay. Yeah, you can unmute yourself. If you have any questions, just let us know.
So this is Eric up District 2 in Lewiston, Idaho. I have a number for you guys for your 24-hour thing, but it's different than what you have on your screen.
Okay.